Hey, what's up? Kalen here. Welcome to the live stream. Today is for Friday. I didn't even remember what the day was. Friday, December 13th. And a couple of topics for today to get us started. First up, I got a question from somebody. By the way, it's funny. I saw this thing recently on Twitter where they said, anytime a podcaster says, I've been hearing this question X, they have not been hearing this question X. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I only ever say that if I actually get that question. Okay. So somebody was like, yeah, I'm going to be doing a Shopify site with React soon. And they asked, how can I level up into doing Magento sites? Somebody that didn't have much Magento experience. And actually, I think that's a perfect transition into, first of all, if you're getting into working with Shopify and React, you may fall in love with that. You may just want to go the Shopify route, really focus there. You may want to do multiple e-commerce platforms. You may not want to focus on a single one. But if you do, for whatever reason, want to dip into the Magento market a little bit, that's a perfect path to go because React and PWA is really important in the Magento community currently. So that's a great starter project for you, that Shopify site. Get in there, get familiar with it. In theory, you should be able to do a front end site. In theory, you should be able to be agnostic to the e-commerce platform. Now, in practice, that's probably not exactly the case because there are going to be some specific, implementation details that are going to affect things for you. So in theory, it really shouldn't matter at all. I'm sure in practice, it's going to matter a little bit. But use that as a project. Use that as a project to launch yourself into getting familiar with doing PWA for e-commerce. And then, for example, if I was looking for somebody for a PWA role for Magento and they had some really killer work they did on a Shopify site, I'd be like, cool. I'd be like, that's something that most likely clients will be interested in at least having the conversation, and then see where you can go from there. So that is my recommendation there. Next up, again, on the topic of, related to front end and PWA and kind of front end modern frameworks. I'm gonna do two versions of this. If you as a developer are frustrated with the code base you're working in, let's say you're doing Magento work or whatever, and let's say maybe you're working with more legacy code base, or you're just not excited about it for whatever reason, right? You're frustrated with the work. Or whatnot, you should really start to look at Vue. And there's lots of frameworks. There's React. There's Vue storefront. There's an Angular one. There's lots of different ones, right? And I'm sure that they're all great. Vue is the one that I seem to be most attracted to, that I've worked with myself. And there's a level of excitement that people have when they're working in Vue. The Vue storefront community is just exploding. So I would say start getting into that because it's a great skill set, number one. There's growing demand for it. Number two, developers seem to really enjoy working in it. And it also, is something that can hook into a Magento site. So something you can talk to your boss about, hey, we really need to get hooked up with Vue storefront or whatever. Or maybe they want to go the standard, Magento native route of doing the Magento PWA Studio. That's fine as well. And I'm sure that'll be enjoyable to work in. So yeah, that's just a great way for you to not only keep your skills up to date and marketable, but also to be able to do something that you enjoy and that you can, that experience of working in a code base that's a little legacy and everything is just hard to do. Everything's frustrating every time you got to touch the code, is something that can kind of weigh you down. So I think it's a great technique. Now pivoting, and if you are a employer of developers, whether you're a merchant, agency owner, team lead, you've got developers you're managing, whatever, the reason why you should be looking at Vue or other front end frameworks is because, for one, it's a great way to improve the usability of your site, improve the speed of your site, right? And also the flip side is to improve developer satisfaction, because developers really enjoy working in these new modern front end frameworks. And even if you have a developer that's chugging along, doing the same old Magento code, they might be, maybe everything seems like it's fine, status quo, everything seems fine. But, developers like to keep their skills sharp, especially if they're good developers. They like to learn new things and challenge themselves. And so, if they're not looking into these front-end frameworks, and I'm going to just go with Vue because it's just my favorite. There's others that are good as well. If they're not looking at Vue, they're probably, their skill set might be slipping, and or maybe they just don't feel like they have the bandwidth to do it based on all the current demands they have, on their time at work. So I think that as a team lead, as an employer, is something you want to be looking at to keep your team engaged, to keep them excited about what they're doing, and again, to improve the performance of your site or of the sites that you're delivering for clients. So definitely look at that. All right. Lastly, is my little rant on 10x devs. I see a lot of times people push back on this idea of 10x developers, and it's like, that's dumb. That's so dumb, or that doesn't exist. Or if they admit that 10x developers exist, they automatically assume that they're like a total jerk and they don't work well with anybody else. And I don't know, like I don't immediately have so many negative feelings about 10x developers. And the 10 is an arbitrary number. The point is that, as developers, there's talent is unevenly distributed, right? That's just life, right? I mean, you look at the analogy that's interesting to draw is to athletes, right? Like if you asked, are there 10x athletes? Everybody will tell you, yeah, of course there are, right? And depending on how you measure that number, are we talking 10x or 100x, right? If you look at earnings or something like that, or if you look at some other way to measure it, you probably are looking at more like 100x or 1000x athletes compared to, let's say, your average high school player, average, whatever. Average out of shape middle-aged player. So, and the constraints on being an athlete are physical. So how much more so as a developer, where you're only constrained by like your mind and by, electronic circuits, you should be able to have even higher, differentials in productivity. And so to me, it's a cool thing if somebody is a super, super productive, and I've met people that are just highly productive. There doesn't have to immediately be something negative about it. There can be, and there can be the developer who's really good but is a jerk and hard to work with. And that obviously causes a lot of problems with the team. And I'm not saying that you should hire somebody like that and not care about how it impacts the team. Of course you should. But it's not necessarily the case. And it's just, to me, I think it's cool if there's somebody that's insanely productive. I mean, look at somebody like Linus Torvalds, right? Now, in his case, like, it seems he is kind of a jerk from most anecdotes. So maybe that's a bad example. But I mean, if you just look at the stuff he's built, I mean, Git, I mean, Linux, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And I've talked about Vue in this video earlier, and you look at like Evan Yu, the guy that created it. I mean, the amount of productivity unleashed by that creation is insane. So to me, it's just a cool thing. And obviously also with Commerce Hero, I'm in the hiring world. So if I see a developer I think is really good, that's cool to me. Like it just is. I don't think we should need to necessarily be so immediately negative about that idea. Now, are there other types of people who function in more of a facilitating role, facilitating others? Like I've heard people say, the only 10x developer is the person who makes 10 other developers 1x better. And that's cool. Like that also is really cool, but it's not the only kind of 10x developer. It just isn't. It just isn't. So I don't know. That's just my rant on this. I think 10x developers exist and are cool and should be looked up to, just like we look up to athletes, super athletes, Kobe and LeBron. And that doesn't mean we can all be them. Most likely you're not going to be them. Right. So, but it's something to aspire to, and to be inspired by. So anywho, that's all I got for you today. I hope you have a fantastic Friday and a great weekend, and I will see you some